Hello YouTube, this is Ben Gessel. How's it going? This video is going to have to do a little bit with, well, it's going to focus on architecture. I might add another video in, depending on how this one goes. I'm going to kind of approach this subject a little differently than many of my other videos. It's going to be a little bit more visually based, so we'll try to have a lot of links in the description so you guys can see a lot of these things I'm talking about. But I'm going to go just with kind of a search approach online. So I'll be doing this as I talk. I'll be looking these things up and talking about them and what I think of these different styles. So this one might go on for a little while. I apologize in advance. Okay. Again, this has to do with different types of architecture and what I think of them. First, we're just going to go through the list as it looks on the internet. The first one here is revivalism. Revivalism in architecture, and of course I know there's a lot of architecture majors out there, design majors might be chuckling a little bit. That's okay, I don't mind if people make fun of me in this, or they say I'm not an expert so I shouldn't be talking about this as much. Okay, I'll have you know though that architecture was something I was considering doing as a major when I was younger. It is a interest of mine. Okay, so don't get on my case. This is just a hobby, right? But so again, revivalism in architecture is the use of visual styles that consciously echo the style of a previous architectural era. So it's kind of like, oh, you see something and it reminds you of some earlier style. Revivalism. And of course, online it looks like they have got kind of a, like a not southern plantation thing, but they have the pillars, the Greek pillars of the house, and it looks kind of like a modern version of a kind of pillared brick house in the East United States. And if you go a little farther here, you see all these different styles that look, Victorian, kind of the English brick thing, Tudor, and the colonial thing, and the kind of timber frame, wood and white plaster, and so it covers the gamut here. Different types of styles, but it's just a little bit more updated kind of thing. So revivalism is kind of a lot of the old, a little bit of the new. Yeah, it's okay. Modern architecture. Yes. So I'm not the biggest fan of modern architecture, but however, I will say this: there's another type of architecture I'll get to here in a bit that I like a lot more. I suppose it's just that it has something to do with the lack of personality, which in modern architecture, a lot of folks are going with more personality with all these interesting shapes and curves and buildings, but the problem is that there's just a lot of sorry, let's sneeze. A lot of well, just gray, or light gray, or there's just not a lot of color in these buildings. Silver, just very blocky, very. So modern architecture. Modern architecture, or modernist architecture, is a term applied to a group of styles of architecture, and there's more to architecture, which emerged in the first half of the 20th century and became dominant after World War II. So we go a little farther into these images. Now, of course, there's some types of architecture, modern architecture, I think that are really amazing. I think that the type of architecture I might be thinking about in my own mind that's linked to this, I'd like a lot more. You have I guess it's a Frank Lloyd Wright type. I'm not sure what they call it exactly, but where they combine the landscape of an area with a home, or especially home and business, but like a home with the rock, I like that's very awesome. Anyway, kind of mid 1900s Americana style type thing. And then you have the European thing is kind of hit or miss, I think. A little bit with their modernist kinds of things. There's I guess I kind of like, I'm not sure what you call it, but it's a concrete or some kind of something along those lines, but sort of material. It's very light gray. It's not uniform, but if you use, I don't know, if you mix in a little bit of greenery with some of these styles, it just really is awesome. All you need is a few trees, a little bit of grass, and it just like comes alive. I just don't like when it's too much concrete, I guess you could say. Yeah. But perhaps a little bit harder than the modernist thing. Perhaps there's more to it than that. I just, And of course, the Sydney Opera House is a good example of this. I think that's pretty cool. I just think, there's all the crazy shapes and things. Incidentally, there's a place in Seattle. It's called it's kind of a rock, or we call it Seattle Music SMP or something. Seattle Music Project, or some building that's really weird in the Seattle Center area. Oh, Experience Music Project, EMP, Experience Music Project, and the building is modernist. So, yeah, I mean, there are some styles I think that are very, very awesome. They have a lot of personality. So getting back to our other stuff here, Victorian architecture. So, I mean, yeah, this is like Big Ben in London. Victorian architecture is a series of architectural revival styles in the mid to late 19th century. Victorian refers to the reign of Queen Victoria, called the Victorian era, etc., etc., Wikipedia. So yeah, very dignified, very regal, very British. Italianate architecture. The Italianate style of architecture was a distinct 19th century phrase in the history of classical architecture. Charming, nice. Kind of your pinks and your oranges and your beiges and yellows and whites. And, yeah, nice little, windows with a little, I don't know. Yeah, nice. Italianate. This is classical, no, Gothic architecture. Gothic architecture, I did a report on this when I was in 7th grade. This is big time in Catholic cathedrals, of course, and other big cathedrals in Europe. Gothic architecture is a style of architecture that flourished in Europe during the High and Late Middle Ages. It evolved from Romanesque architecture and was succeeded by Renaissance architecture. And so I know all about this stuff, but yeah, we're talking, I believe it used a lot of stone, not necessarily marble, more stone, but this is the stained glass window type thing. So basically, your big, huge cathedrals and all your ornate, kinds of sculptures in and outside, just works of art. Well, I mean, of course we love Gothic architecture. I mean, anybody who's Catholic goes to church in a cathedral like this is automatically going to be very aware of this type of architecture anyway. It was meant to glorify God, kind of thing. It was meant to be grandiose, of course. So yeah, sure, I love it, but it's very grandiose, big, yeah, expansive. Art Deco. Art Deco, sometimes referred to as just Deco, is a style of visual arts, in addition to just architecture. And so it's visual arts, architecture, and design that first appeared in France just before World War One. And so this is a very, I think that this kind of stuff I just love as well. But it's very ornate, but in kind of a way that's a bit more, it would remind a lot of folks of the 1920s, 1930s, pre-World War II, or even World War II-ish. I mean, there's a kind of an aspect to it where, I mean, this is like old New York City, the Chrysler Building or something. Some of the older skyscrapers in San Francisco, maybe. It's really a lot of palm, just like palm leaf designs or leaf designs or fan kind of designs, floral designs. Like the NBC logo is a little bit Art Deco-y. So Art Deco, 1910, 1939, yeah, pre-World War II. If you guys have seen like some of those really old radios, it's kind of Art Deco type style to the way those old radios, a lot of old radios from World War One and on, were kind of designed a little bit like that, like this. But yeah, I like it. It's cool. I don't know. It's hard to say which ones are my favorites, but I'm very familiar with Gothic architecture. And Victorian is very charming as well, along with some of my more favorite modern ones. But I'm not the biggest fan of modern architecture, but sometimes you can get some really awesome effects, with modern architecture. Yeah. Neoclassical architecture. Oh man, this just feels like school at this point. I mean, yes, the pillars of Greek, columns. Yes, it feels. I mean, looking at this stuff, I feel like I'm taking a class in college in architecture. It's a bit pedantic, right? It's a bit academic feeling. Still very grandiose. Again, very Greek, very majestic. Ancient. It's ancient temples in Greece, and the U.S. Capitol building and a lot of state Capitol buildings, essentially pillars, and that's neoclassical architecture. Neoclassical architecture is an architectural style produced by the neoclassical movement that began in the mid-18th century. So this is, I guess, the buildings that this was based on were the ancient stuff. Of course, Greece and stuff. Mid-18th century, mid-1700s. So Thomas Jefferson loved this stuff. There you go. Okay. Gothic Revival architecture. Kind of straightforward in itself. Gothic Revival is an architectural movement that began in the late 1740s in England. Its popularity grew rapidly in the early 19th century when increasingly serious and learned admirers of Neo-Gothic, etc., etc. So yeah, it's English. Looks really cool. Looks very, British. You have a lot of the ornate, steeper roofs and that sort of thing. This kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. Obviously, this is pretty cool too. And of course, the classical architecture, which is related to the neoclassical architecture. I already kind of talked about that a little bit already. Shingle style architecture. This is like your old American English type homes. The shingle style is more American. The shingle style is an American architectural style made popular by the rise of New England School of Architecture, which eschewed the highly ornamented patterns of the Eastlake style in Queen Anne architecture. So a little bit more rustic compared to, say, like fancy English and stuff, but your old old houses in the Northeast. The big ones, the haunted houses, have some of the shingle style architecture to them. I think a little bit. And some, get some really cool looking houses that, you can get some really interesting effects. And some of these houses I'm looking at here look fairly modern, actually, or they could have been built today. The cookie cutter type. So the shingle style is still very much in vogue. But the older houses that had that kind of style are often sometimes your haunted house types in the United States. But sometimes those haunted house style buildings are a bit more English. I don't know. Federal architecture. Between the United States between 1780 and 1830, you can recognize it, and it's okay. Square windows, very Washington D.C. East Coast kind of thing. Greek Revival architecture, again, vernacular architecture. This is going to be a lot more kind of it's architecture that suits the surroundings a bit more. So if you're just looking at these pictures already, looking at anywhere from Mongolia to the Navajo Reservation to Hawaii to Africa, East or West Africa. There's all kinds of different cultures and locales that this architectural style works with. It's pretty diverse, but it's pretty cool, actually. This is a very interesting style that's very versatile, and it's particularly very well suited to a non-Western or in tropical areas, or just not European necessarily as much. You have Georgian architecture, straightforward. Kind of looks a little bit, again, English, King George, not necessarily just the South, but this is Georgian King George from 1714 to 1830. This is kind of a little bit of the insane asylum type buildings, maybe in, say, England, or some of the really rigid schools and boarding houses in England, like Jane Eyre. That kind of house might be Georgian architecture. Colonial revival architecture. Pretty cool. Second Empire architecture. A little bit Detroit-ish. Second Empire is an architectural style most popular in the latter half of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th century. It was so named for the architectural elements in vogue during the era of the Second French Empire. Again, you look at some of these buildings, and it's a little bit more East United States. But again, a lot of these houses and buildings look like they could be easily in Detroit or the outskirts. Romanesque architecture preceded Gothic, but yet your old churches in Europe, especially a lot of churches in England, I think, like a Romanesque style. The American Craftsman style, or the American Arts and Crafts movement, is American domestic architectural, interior design, landscape design, applied arts, and decorative art style and lifestyle. I love that this is kind of your rambling, rambler, right? So, aside from the shingle thing, this is a big time American style, and this kind of architecture I like a lot, but it's very much a little bit more your Brady Bunch style house, maybe kind of a family Parent Trap style house in California. I love these kinds of houses. There's a lot of personality. A lot of personality in some of these houses. Sometimes you get more of the recent cookie cutter types of some of the stuff again too, but It's a lot of these little not as steep of roofs, kind of more of a cozy, comfortable kind of look about the house. A lot of wood, a lot of natural wood um, in the house. Brick chimneys. Yeah, but the color scheme is a bit more um, maybe mid 1900s. Running that, you have your light blues and your natural brick reds and your light greens, and so you have some color, but it's not too bright. It's a bit more rust. Not always, not necessarily rustic, but again, you're comfortable looking, you know, two-story American type houses. The International Style. The International Style is a name of a major architectural style that is said to have emerged in the 1920s and 30s, the formative decades of modern architecture. Not super thrilled by it, but it's okay. I mean, it's got similar. Um, Streamlined modern. Streamlined modern or art modern is a late type of the Art Deco architecture and design that emerged in the 1930s. So a lot of curving buildings. I think it had some, like maybe sometimes you'll have like the Back to the Future malt shop or a diner, you know, or something like that. You know, Back to the Future where he goes in the first one. And some aspects of that kind of building will be a little bit like this streamlined modern kind of architecture at a street corner. Instead of it just being a right angle building, it has this kind of curve, right? Natural curve where the building meets the sidewalk, and a little bit more of that kind of thing. And then you'll have like the, I don't know, 60s, 50s, 60s, or 50s and 60s style signs and lettering, that sort of thing. Yeah. This is very 1950s, you know, kind of thing to me. Well, at least post World War II. Bullet trains and old cars and things. Yeah. A lot of chrome. The Beaux-Arts architecture. Oh, this is very French. Yeah. Well, you get your big wide buildings and your columns and really, really fancy ornate buildings, and that's, yeah, it's nice. But yeah, it's obviously very French. Beaux-Arts architecture. Beaux. Beaux. As a prairie school kind of architecture, which is not really a whole lot to talk about there. It's okay. Tudor revival architecture, awesome. I love Tudor style. American Queen Anne style. Nice. Postmodern architecture. Not really super into that. It's even crazier than, it's a little bit nutty. Well, looking at more images here. This guy. Oh my gosh, it's a French fry building. I don't know if you'll see the fit. Anyway, it's a French fry building. There's maybe the whimsicalness. This is actually pretty cool. But at a certain point, you feel like you're in like Toon World, Toonland, or the Toontown. Yeah, Roger Rabbit's Toontown, without necessarily the bright colors. Without the bright colors, these buildings are really, really wacky. Some of them. Yeah, it's really get going to town all these different imaginative shapes. And you have the Sydney Opera House. That's just more. That's a really cool building. But let's see. Romanesque revival, Richardsonian. There's so many different styles here. A lot of European or English styles. Renaissance revival architecture, European mansion, Victorian house, stick style, American colonial. I'm just going for my favorites now. I don't think I like the brutalist architecture. It's very blocky. brutalist architecture. Yeah, looks pretty grim. Yeah, it's pretty grim looking stuff here. Still, there's a kind of a charm to it. But yeah, it's more grim and blocky. Yes and no. I'm going to say more no than yes, but I suppose there's certain aspects that are pretty cool. There's some things that are pretty cool about it. Yeah, yeah. But you just, if a building starts to resemble more of a parking garage, I don't know. Yeah, brutalist. So yeah, I mean that's some of that stuff I was actually really liking a lot with the modernist style. Anyway, mid-century modern ranch style house. The ranch style house actually is even more like the family, the Parent Trap thing I was going for. Kind of really broad and spread out. Art Nouveau, Dutch colonial revival, timber framing. I mentioned that one a little bit before. These are kind of some of these styles are very interconnected with the Tudor stuff. Contemporary architecture, I mentioned that a little bit already. Queen Anne style, Tudor, Byzantine, Chateau-esque, Egyptian revival, and colonial architecture. So it just gives you kind of an overview of different styles. I'm going to try to make some other videos though in the future talking about more of a connection between things that I've pictured and visualized in some of these styles of architecture. Might not be, it's something I'm still kind of mulling over, but I've had, I guess there's like it's the Metro Arts and Architecture website that gets into subways, and some of the really cool subways have kind of a modernist or was it brutalist style, where the word brutalist sounds, but really it's just kind of blocky and a lot of concrete. But if you do it right, you have certain kind of lighting, it's actually really awesome. I just think that it's great to have some little bit of greenery to offset some of all that concrete. But there's some, you can really get some interesting effects and moods with some of that stuff. Particularly, I think, I like the idea. Say if you're doing a staircase in this kind of brutalist style, if you're gonna, have like a kind of like a square edges going up with the concrete kind of, but this thicker kind of style. Everything is kind of square. It's nice to kind of combine that with squared off hedges, or kind of that, I don't know what you call it, but kind of a with the concrete, stairwell and maybe walls around it, or a kind of open air breezeway or whatever, say in a college campus. If you have kind of a in and out, right angled, I think grooved is what I'm looking for, a grooved kind of surface with the with walls and things. That's a really nice effect, I think, with that kind of stuff. Anyway, leave me your thoughts and comments below. I'll talk to you guys later.